Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the February 27th, 2013 meeting of the Lowell Conservation Commission. I'd like to take an item on the agenda out of order, and I'm going to call, this is the 5th item on the agenda. It's a request for certificate of compliance continued from the 2/13 meeting. Megan Maraghi concerning DEP file number 2060411. The project location is 48 and 50 Melrose Avenue.
Good evening. My name's Maureen Hanley, here on behalf of the client. At the last hearing, the commission had requested that we plant 2 trees at the rear of the property, and I revised the plan to show 2 red maple trees. They're about 2 to 2.5 inch caliper at the rear of the property. The commission had also requested that I write up a bond regarding these trees. However, my client had insisted on paying for the invoice with Weston Nurseries, and we have coordinated with the owner of the property, one of the owners of the property, so that once the ground thaws, Miss Linda Harvey will call Weston Nurseries and schedule the appointment to come out to have them actually install and plant the trees on the property. So in the package that you have the revised plans shown with the trees, you have the quote, as well as a copy of the check showing that my client has paid for the trees and the installation of the trees. And so at this point, would like a full certificate of compliance for the property.
I don't have any questions. Commissioner Barnum?
No, I'm pleased with the way this turned out as far as resolving the problem before the fact, since we can't plant right now. And I think this is a good way to handle it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lovely?
No comments. Thanks for your prompt attention.
Commissioner Biedron? All right. Do I have a motion regarding this? I agree with the comments that were made. I think I appreciate the forwardness of your client and the neighbor regarding the proactiveness of getting this done and simple.
Thank you.
I'd like to move to issue a certificate of compliance on this project.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? I'd just like to add actually nothing on that. Okay. Call it, and all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, moving on to the first item on the agenda. You'll have to. All right, I apologize for the slight pause there. Moving on to the first item on the agenda now, notice of intent continued from the February 13th meeting. Dennis Scannell concerning DEP file number 2060702. Project location is 41 Tanner Street, and it's construction of an LED billboard within wetland buffer along the River Meadow Brook, the riverfront area bordering land subject to flooding and bordering vegetated wetlands. Ms. Hanlon, if you could identify yourself for the record.
Good evening. My name's Maureen Hanley from North Environmental Services, here on behalf of Dennis Scannell. At the last hearing, the commission had discussed the plantings within the restoration area. The commission requested that the trees be placed in a random fashion, which we show on the plan. They also requested 3-inch caliber trees, which I also show on the plan as well. The city of Lowell had also suggested additional plantings. I added those plantings to the list of trees as an option to plant within this restoration area. In addition to that, in doing this project, we've discovered that there's a 30-foot wide sewer easement that runs through this property. And it's actually a sewer trunk. It's 78 inches wide, so it's fairly large. And as you can see on the plan, it almost runs directly through the middle of the property. And as a result of this, we had to shift the billboard to the north. So now the billboard is proposed 30.4 feet from the bank of the River Meadow Brook area. It's actually located further away than the original proposal that we came in with. And as a result of this, I had the engineer from Dana Perkins just draft up a letter stating on how this had come about. Apparently, this is an active sewer line. It was installed in the late 1800s. It's still active today. It wasn't shown on the deed, so when the engineers researched this property and they designed the layout, typically a sewer easement would be shown on the deed. It wasn't shown on the deed. Fortunately, my client had remembered that there was something beneath the ground. It certainly wouldn't be obvious to a surveyor who goes out to the property because there isn't any sewer manholes located on the property. So you wouldn't know that it was there. But fortunately, we were able to discover this sewer trunk and accommodate it and shift the billboard over to the north a bit. And fortunately, it's further back from the resource area as well.
That's kind of surprising that a easement of that magnitude was missed.
Absolutely, but fortunately, we were able to catch it. And if it's not written in the deed of record, you wouldn't know that it was there. So,
Well, the city engineer's plans would have shown that.
right.
I have a question. There's no bounds to the easement? It just kind of curves?
Yeah, it just curves from, if you see the attached plan on the Dana Perkins letter, it actually shows the sewer easement. So,
So did somebody give you like an AutoCAD layer that you just put on, or how did you?
from my understanding, Dana Perkins got in touch with the city's engineering department, and they were able to give them the information on this location of the sewer line.
Okay. Is it a brick sewer?
You know, to be honest with you, I don't know. It was installed in the late 1800s,
Yeah,
and it's massive. It's 78 inches, so it's 5 to 6 feet
yeah.
wide, and from my understanding, it's 25 feet underground. I'm not exactly sure what it's made of, or if it's been replaced at some point since then, or what the condition is.
And then that manhole that it goes to, that's the manhole that we had the problem with the clearing?
That's correct.
Okay.
All right. I don't have any questions. Commissioner Barnum?
I'd just like to note that I think the planting plan is much improved and was really what I was looking for. And I'm also pleased that the billboard has been moved a little further away from the wetland.
Commissioner Lovely?
No comments. I'll just echo what Commissioner Barnum just said. Nice job.
Thank you.
Commissioner Biedron, any further
Already asked mine, sorry.
questions? All right. Do we get any, Aaron, did we get any input from the city engineers? I mean, obviously, the proponent found these on their own, but how did we miss something like that? I mean, I know the applicant's supposed to find these out on their own, but I would think that the city engineer would kind of realize that they have a fairly substantial sewer easement running through the property here.
I don't have an answer to that.
All right.
I know that the project was reviewed earlier by the department. As the commission knows, some comments were provided relative to the project. I think it's just one of those things. It's a really old sewer line.
Yeah.
That,
I mean, this would have been a
should
really
have
big oops if
Yeah, it
this
would.
had gone through. All right. Okay. Is there anyone here who would like to offer their comments or concerns regarding this project? Is there anyone here who'd like to offer their comments or concerns? Is there anyone here who'd like to offer their comments or concerns? All right. If there are no further questions from the commission, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Offer a motion to close the public hearing.
By Commissioner Lovely, seconded by?
Second.
By Commissioner Biedron. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay. Seems to me that this has progressed from an enforcement order through now to an application for a notice of intent. It seems fairly straightforward. I agree with Commissioner Varnum's comments that the plans here and what we've asked for have been delineated very clearly. So it's nice to get that back from our comments and from the meetings regarding this particular matter. So that being said, do we have a motion on this?
This is a notice of intent, right?
Yes.
I'll motion to issue an order of conditions.
Second.
All right, and I'm assuming that's a motion for a Lowell standard
Yes.
order?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, with no other special conditions other than the ones that are attendant to the order. Any discussion? That was seconded by Commissioner Varnum. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye. Commissioner Varnum?
Aye.
Chair is yes. Commissioner Lovely?
Aye.
Commissioner Biedron?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Aaron, is the enforcement order still in effect on that?
Well, there is the piece on, relative to the tree removal on the other side of
Correct.
River Meadow Brook. So my understanding is that the property owner is in discussion with the Department of Transportation on replanting of the trees that were removed. Once that has been worked out between those two parties, there will need to be another notice of intent filing with the Conservation Commission. So that enforcement order still is active for the other side of the river.
All right. Okay, thank you. The reason I bring that up, Ms. Hanlon, is once you've reached an accord with the Department of Transportation or DCAM, whoever you're dealing with on that particular property, you come back here, let us know what that is, and we can lift the enforcement order on.
The plan was we were gonna come up with a planting plan that was acceptable to them and then come back to the board.
Okay,
So
all right,
that's the route we're gonna take.
okay. I mean, typically, a notice of intent would supersede or would roll the enforcement order and lift it, but in this particular case, since the scope of the enforcement order was beyond the actual notice of intent and order of conditions, it'll remain in place until
Okay,
that's all squared away.
okay.
All right, moving on, second item on the agenda is a notice of intent, Lowell National Historic Park, concerning DEP file number 2060693. The project location is 23.1 School Street, and it's replaced the existing dock and gangway and associated earthwork along the Merrimack River, which is a riverbank bordering vegetated wetlands and riverfront area. Do we have anyone here for that one tonight?
I thought we were gonna have someone, yes, they're aware of the agenda item.
All right. Yeah, well, is there anyone here for the, this is also another national park one, it's the next item on the agenda, 307.1 Jackson Street? All right, okay, and we'll skip over those two at this point in time. The next item on the agenda is the enforcement order, also continued from the February 13th meeting. Paul Mercia, concerning DEP file number 2060701. The violation location is 51 and 57 Shirley Avenue, and it's construction of a single-family home in a 100-year floodplain in bordering land subject to flooding. Last time we were here on that, see if I can find my notes. We had requested that you speak to your client about updating and the replanting plan, and I noticed in our packets that we had received something, but also a performance bond, and either to supplement or in lieu of, and we can discuss that tonight, in lieu of the accrued fines and penalties that had been established as a result of this enforcement order. So I note in our packets that we have received information back on both of those items, and so Ms. Hanlon, why don't you identify yourself for the record again? And
Maureen Hanley from Norse Environmental Services.
now, is it Hanley or Hanlon?
Hanley,
Hanley.
Hanley.
Oh, I apologize, I've been mispronouncing your name tonight.
No problem. So I know that this enforcement order is kind of a work in order, and I'm trying to submit plans to the commission as we go along. So at the last hearing, the commission had requested I revise the mitigation plan to show 20 trees on the lot. So that's exactly what I did. I kept the same tree species that the city had suggested, and that was red maple, green ash, and American beech. So I just kind of did a hand-drawn type plan prior to sending it off to the engineer to design it, just so I can get an idea of if this is what the commission wants before I kind of put it on a final plan. I also got a quote from Western Nurseries for the cost of stabilizing the site, installing the plants, the cost of the plants, the delivery of the plants. That is also in your packet. Western Nurseries had suggested that if we do 3-inch caliber trees on this lot, for them to be planted 20 to 25 feet apart. So what I did was I offset the plants 10 feet from the side yard and the rear yard. And the thought behind that was I don't want to put a tree on a property line so that in the future, the tree falls or falls on the neighbor's house, we have a dispute. I offset the trees 15 feet from the front yard, and it's a bit further because wintertime, sand and salting the roadway, I don't want the trees to get damaged. So it's somewhat in a checkerboard pattern on the plan, but the reason for that is the spacing. If we're gonna do this mitigation plan and purchase these trees and go through with it, I certainly want the trees to survive. I guess I would like the commission's opinion on if I'm going in the right direction. Is this going to satisfy you, or are you looking for something completely different?
I have two, in an answer to your direct question, I guess, and it's going to be a question back to you, and that is, you're now showing plantings covering the entire lot.
Right.
And your comments at the last meeting, and of course, we don't want it. We want to know what the DEP is going to do with the superseding procedure.
Right.
Because we don't want to be putting in trees to take them down if the DEP allows construction and then it comes back before us and we permit construction. So you don't want to, plant 2.5, 3-inch caliper trees only to take them down again. That's counterproductive economic waste and whatnot. But
I guess I went with the thought of, if the DEP didn't approve the order of conditions, I thought this was the avenue that the commission wanted me to take. And I felt at the last meeting that you wanted to see something. You wanted to see a revised mitigation plan. I'm not going to assume that I have a permit when I don't have a permit. So I was just trying to move forward in that direction. Obviously, if we get the permit to build the house, we'll have to come back to the commission and this would be revised, but.
my other question is in your letter that's dealing with the performance bond, and you have a quote from Western Nurseries, but then you have item number 2, item number 3, indicating that you need additional quotes.
Right.
Is that for your own purposes? You would like to satisfy and see if your Weston is in the ballpark as far as?
No, when I went through the city's bond procedures, it had suggested 3 quotes. It has a procedure. You want 3 quotes, and then you want, on top of whatever the quote is that the commission decides on and nursery, then you're gonna add 20% of that to ensure, I suppose, the work gets done and what have
Right,
you.
there's always a cushion that's built in.
Right, so I just didn't have the 2 additional quotes. That's something I can get. It's not a problem, but I didn't have it for tonight's meeting, so that's why I just left it there.
All right, what I would like to do then is, now that we have at least something on the table to discuss, what I would like to do is, let's focus on the 2 questions. One is the sufficiency of the proposal and the restoration plan for the site in the case of no superseding order or a denial on a superseding order such that the site needs to be restored. And then ancillary to that would be a discussion by the commission with respect to whether or not, because this is just something that I had raised at the last meeting, whether or not the commission would accept in lieu of fines or in place of fines or supplemental to fines or in addition to fines, the performance bond as you've at least, gotten the ball in motion on it, the initial proposal here. So I think I made my thoughts known at the last meeting that I would be leaning heavily towards accepting the performance bond and using those funds from Mr. Mercia in the place instead of the fines to restore the site or to restore so much of the site as is, as is ultimately approved by the commission, whether or not, depending on the superseding proceeding. So I think some of the fine is appropriate and should be paid, and we can discuss, whether it's a percentage or whether it's a fixed amount, perhaps maybe the initial fine in the first volley, because that was a much smaller accrual than the second. The second one was a much larger amount, and I don't know what the final tally was, but this quote for $18,000, I think, is somewhat in line with what the second fine accrual was. Aaron, I don't know if you have that information, but.
Yeah, Swathi put together a quick calculation of what the fine accrued to. It was 56 days that the plan had not been submitted for the Conservation Commission's consideration, so that tallied to $16,800.
Okay. And now, was that in total, or was that the second, once we started the second round of per diem?
That is, that is the total. So,
That's the total.
so
Was there a breakdown of the first and second?
The initial fine, it was for $1,500. So the outstanding, I suppose, fine that is under discussion is, would be $15,300.
Okay, all right. And again, I think for me at least, well, I would be leaning towards, since we're discussing this, I would be leaning towards keeping the initial fine and that being enforceable. However, the second volley of fine, even though in my mind that was the more egregious one because it was the one, it's, hey, we're not playing games anymore, you've already been fined once, we want you here, and we were still getting ignored. So even though that was the more, at least in my mind, the more egregious circumstance, I would be more willing to, in lieu of the fine, to accept, the performance bond for the site restoration. And again, to the extent any of it is left over, Mr. Mercier would be entitled to, a refund or reimbursement of what was left over, to the extent it's all used up. And it sounds like, and it sounds like the performance bond may in fact exceed what the fine was. So, it may be a moot issue as far as that goes, but, to the extent that it's, a greater amount, then we have the bond anyway. As far as the replanting plan, I'm fine with it. I know we'll be revisiting it, and again, it didn't seem to me to be a terribly difficult thing to do and to get in front, and I know you're the point person here now, so you're, somewhat getting the lecture. You probably weren't even aware of this issue 2 months ago or a month and a half ago, so, this is what we wanted from Mr. Mercier. I'm at least satisfied that we have something to discuss now. All right. Commissioner Barnum?
I have some questions about the plan here. Did their estimate include smoothing out the site and removing the stumps?
If you go through my email, I had requested the estimate to include that. I can verify that because on the quote, it shows the plants and the installation. It doesn't necessarily say that in the quote, so I can verify it, but in my email, I had asked them, there's a few stumps that needs to be pulled out. terms of grading, really just leveling it off because we are in a floodplain. We don't want to change the existing grades by any stretch of the imagination, but we do want to remove the stumps and then stabilize the site, loam and seed it, and put the plants in, so.
Well, I think we probably would want to have someone out there certifying that the grades were being kept what they were originally on the plan. I know you had proposed some changes in the grades on your notice of intent,
Right.
but should the notice of intent not result in an order of conditions, I would think the original grades would want to be kept on the site.
Absolutely, we don't want to touch the grades.
The second thing I'm wondering about is the existing trees. There are 4 or 5 large trees that were not taken down, and some of these proposed sites for new trees would conflict with where those existing trees are standing, especially along the back property line. I don't know whether we could just, as they're being planted, pace off and make sure they're not too close to those other trees.
Okay.
Or there is one tree that's leaning quite a bit. I had said at the time that I didn't think it would be much of a loss if that one were taken down and replaced. It's one that's leaning over the neighbor's property.
Right.
And half of it was dead, and so it's really only half a tree at this point. And looks rather precarious the way it's leaning it. So I don't have any, I think the species that have been chosen are good, and we had suggested those since they were existing on the site previously. As far as the fines that were levied against Mr. Mercier, I'm a little bit hesitant to sort of make a deal, fines versus bond versus replanting. A lot of it because this is the first time we have issued any fines on this commission, and I'm not sure it sets a good precedent to have the first time that we assess fines to have them dropped, or there doesn't seem to be any set process to drop them. It's just sort of, making a deal, which I'm not sure that's going to be fair to perhaps others in the future. If we make deals on the fines, I think it's unfortunate that the fines occurred, but it was a fine that could have been easily remedied. It wasn't something that required a lot of work, and Mr. Mercier could have drawn up a plan himself and brought it in here, and that would have satisfied us. So I would suggest that we get the bond and the trees replanted, keeping in mind that some of these trees perhaps will have to be planted in a second phase, depending on the outcome of the notice of intent. And I think any discussion of the fine would probably take place after the work is completed. I don't think anyone expects that he'll be paying the fine before the issues are resolved. And I think at that time we could revisit it, and if everything has worked out to what we were asking, then perhaps that would be a time to discuss mitigation of some of the fine.
Commissioner Lovely?
To the chair's 2 points, with respect to the plan, it's my opinion that this plan is sufficient for the time being, obviously until we find out whether or not Mr. Mercy's going to be able to build a home there or not. It would be premature, I would think, to go any further than what you have in front of, presented to us tonight. That being said, I kind of view this as a maximum replanting, upper bound, so to speak. And to Commissioner Varnum's point of view, I would think, obviously, we would want to consider the existing 3 or 4 trees that are out there with final placement of any trees that are on this draft plan. So I, like my colleagues here, are satisfied that this plan is sufficient for the time being, and we'll wait and see what the outcome is of the hearing with Mass DEP before proceeding any further with any plan modifications. To the chair's point and the discussion that happened last meeting with regard to the assessment of penalties and potentially in lieu of penalties, looking at a performance bond, I can tell you that from personal experience, there's been a trend in when we talk about assessing environmental fines, whether it's at the state, local, or federal level. Certainly at the federal level, there's been something called supplemental environmental projects, or SEPs, so to speak, where a portion, in lieu of penalties, which often go to the general treasury, and you don't see the benefit of any sort of work at the site, one way to kind of bring that money to the actual project is to offset that penalty with in-kind work that would be equivalent to the amount of the penalty. I think maybe it's most likely by coincidence, but it seems like the penalty is on par with the performance bond that would be required to perform the work. But to Commissioner Varnum's point of view, I would agree that it may, to just completely drop a fine would probably be premature and may not set a good precedent. So I think my view on this is probably more in line with the chairs, where probably look to keep the initial fine, but as to the second fine, I would, for one, would most likely be satisfied with putting that performance bond in place, because that guarantees that the work will be done. And then, rather than, I guess from my point of view, I think we've been discussing this long enough that I can't obviously, I'm not clairvoyant as to what Mr. Mercy is thinking, but I would, for one, would think that this experience has been enough to kind of send a message that if there's an issue and the commission asks for the applicant or the violator in this case to come before us, it's prudent in his or her interest to do that. And to Commissioner Varnum's point, I would agree completely. The plan you handed us, I mean, it's not a huge level of effort. I mean, something, if we had had this months earlier, it would have been very, we wouldn't be having these subsequent discussions and continuancing of the hearings. So I guess in summation, I think the plan is fine for the time being, and with respect to the penalties, I, for one, think it's probably important to keep the initial assessment, but would be certainly open to, in lieu of the second penalty, looking at the performance bond sufficing. No further comments.
Commissioner Biedron?
I'm just a little confused, because I thought last week we voted on that the amount of the fine was gonna go to a performance bond. So wasn't that already settled?
No, what we had done was we had requested the applicant, or not the applicant, Mr. Mercia to discuss or to open up a dialogue and with us with respect to try and convince us in lieu of, or at least open up a dialogue with respect to establishing a performance bond, and perhaps the commission, again, would look favorable with respect to the penalties and fines that have been established. We've got 56 days that had accrued, and perhaps obviating some of those in lieu of a performance bond to guarantee the site restoration.
Okay. I thought that you guys voted on that and.
Yeah, no, it was, my recollection is the vote was to continue it for 2 weeks till today, with Ms. Hanley coming back before us after discussion with her client. Is that something you would be interested in exploring? And obviously, I'm assuming the answer to that is yes, because they came back with a proposal for a performance bond, so.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And I feel like last meeting, we kept saying the performance bond has to be in the amount of the fines. We mentioned that a bunch of times. It seems like the performance bond is gonna be a lot more. Or it might be significantly more, especially if you're adding on a 20%.
Right.
Okay.
Well, it's the performance bond, again, it's not a punitive thing, it just guarantees work. Now, the work may in fact, I mean, this could proceed in several different ways. Assuming that a superseding order doesn't issue and the site has to be fully restored, we have a quote, and assuming 2 other quotes come in the same general amount here, assuming we order a performance bond of about, ballpark would be $22,000, based on the quote that's been provided. Assuming that the work is done, all invoices have been submitted, and the final tally is $17,000.
Yeah, then they can get reimbursed.
The funds come out of the performance bond, and the balance is returned to Mr. Mercia.
Yep.
Again, we have a performance bond for $22,000, and the work comes out to $27,000, although that's really not likely to happen because they have quotes, so, again, it's, again, quotes, Mr. Mercia, obviously, we have to pay the additional, he'd be able to use the performance bond to pay for the work based on invoices, but he'd also have additional, that he'd have to pay on his own. Now, the open issue, and again, this is still an open enforcement order, the open issue is how much, or if, in fact, the commission is willing to, for lack of a better term, cancel or mitigate some of the accrued fines upon completion of the work. I think Commissioner Varnum made clear her position. My position is I would be willing to do that. Again, I would rather see, I'm not a big fan of punitive fines, and I think Commissioner Varnum, she's been on the commission much longer than I have, but I haven't exactly only been here a couple of days either. I go back to the 90s myself, and she's correct. This is the first time I recall in my years that we've actually levied fines. But I disagree with her characterization that it would set a bad precedent. And for me, I think it sets even the reverse or the obverse is true, is that it sets a better precedent. We have the option of leaving. We levied fines under 2 different enforcement orders. There was an original enforcement order, and I think the accrual on that was about $1,500. And then there was a secondary enforcement order, and the accrual of that was the larger chunk of it. And that's the enforcement order we're here on, actually, in fact, today, is the secondary one.
That's correct. Actually,
Yeah.
for a little clarification, the original $1,500 fine has actually already been issued and ticketed.
Yeah.
That's
a done,
that's
Yeah.
kind of a closed issue as far as it being, the ticket actually being sent and issued to the applicant. So really, the only part I think that's under consideration right now is the amount of the fine that's under the second enforcement order, which is the $15,300.
Well, I still stand we all know how I stood last meeting. I'm still standing kind of strong on that. I'm just happy that, because last meeting we were talking about completely getting rid of it. So I'm just happy that some commissioners now agree somewhat.
I mean, to me, it seems to me that You know, and I agree with Commissioner Varnum. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure. We've both been on the commission for a very long time, and I think we could count on one hand the issues that we've probably strongly disagreed with over the years, and I can't even say that we have a strong disagreement in this particular case.
If I could just clarify, I'm not in favor of lifting the fines until this work for the enforcement order is completed. But at that point, perhaps a discussion could take place. I just think we need all the help we can get to get this site back into compliance.
Yeah, I think, well, see, this is the issue. If we end the enforcement order, then the accrued fines will go to the treasurer's office and will be, as I guess the legal term is, ticketed. So they will in fact be issued and accrued to your client. I think, and before that happens, and really what I would like to do is keep this enforcement order open. We had just requested that you come back with a proposal for a performance bond. Now, we have a proposal. It's not complete yet because you still need to get further quotes. What I would like to do, did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. What I would like to do is to keep it open. And I think we discussed at the last meeting that this should stay open until such time that this comes back before us, pending on what the DEP does with the superseding order. And it will that will necessarily also come back before us under the city bylaw aspect of a notice of intent. Anyhow, assuming the DEP grants a superseding order. If they deny it, then that's the end of it. And then the enforcement order is still open. But the enforcement order should remain open for a couple of reasons. One is there's the restoration, and two, there would be the performance bond would be part of the enforcement order that could ultimately be rolled into an order of conditions if that was the case, if it went that way. But at this point in time, we've asked for things, we've gotten it. I think what I'm hearing is that we as a commission are satisfied with the restoration plan has been proposed with the minor modification to take into account the existing mature trees that remain on the site, and some engineering, perhaps an engineering quote to make sure that the existing grades or the pre-existing grades are also restored as part of the restoration plan. So I think at this point in time, what I would like to do is request a motion to continue. Do you think you'd be able to get the supplemental quote? Now, I don't think we need to bring this back once you get the supplemental quotes, but we would need to bring it back to vote on accepting the performance bond. So my question to you, Ms. Hanley, is how long do you think it's going to take you to get the supplemental quotes and to complete the proposal for the performance bond?
I could probably get it in 2 weeks, but would the commission want to hear from DEP first before voting on this bond?
Well, now we're 4 weeks out on the DEP, perhaps?
I would estimate about a month out.
Okay. I mean, if you can complete the proposal and get it back, what I would suggest is do that, submit it to the office, and they can get it out to us, so at least we can see it.
Okay.
And contemplate it, digest it, or, and whatever. And then we can go back to the original schedule and bring this back in 4 weeks' time. Although the DP's about 4 weeks, do we want to go 6 weeks, or do we want to bring it back in 4 weeks? I just don't want to keep bringing it back. I think we're satisfied now that what we've asked for, we have something on the table. But again, I would like to get the performance bond in place. You know, if you can get a proposal together and get the finished quotes, you know, with the restoration grades as, you know, mentioned by Commissioner Varnum, and the 2 additional quotes, I would also suggest that with the Western Nurseries, you may want to have them include a line item on their quote about the stumpage.
Okay.
Too, okay, so that clarifies that. I did note that in your email, but just to be clear there, I note that that's their largest labor fee is about $10,000. So to
Okay.
me, it seemed to me that would also include the stumpage, but just to be clear, that should be in there.
But don't you think we should hear back from DEP first? Because
Well-
why is she gonna get a performance bond if the house does get?
Well, we're gonna do the I'm getting a sense that we're gonna do the performance bond regardless.
Okay, so you're
Okay.
saying if the
Yeah,
performance
the
bond
other
only
alternative is if the DEP issues a superseding order to approve, you know, a building, then the performance bond is still in place. The restoration plan can be rolled into the city of Lowell order if one issues at that point in time. And then the monies that are part of the performance fund can be used once everything's done towards the final replanting of the site and the landscaping of the site. It can be used for that purpose at that point in time.
Okay.
At that point in time, it may in fact be less than, you know, because of.
Won't be 20.
Yeah, it's gonna change. It won't be as many large caliber trees.
Would it be possible if DEP did approve the house, and I know there's a lot of ifs, but if they did approve the house, to just modify the performance bond? Rather than going, because the way that the performance bond is going now, it's going to be about 20 or 25 grand. And obviously, if a house is permitted on this lot, we can't plant all these trees.
Yeah,
So
I
it
would
might
ra-
be
I
cut
would-
in half.
I would rather keep it in place. That would, see, what you would have to do as part of that is you would have to submit a completely new proposal for an alternate performance bond to take the place of the existing performance bond. You'd have to put a secondary performance bond in place and then request the return of the original performance bond. I've done these before, not through the city of Lowell, but that can be a major hassle. Sometimes it's easier, especially if it's a short-term thing, just to stick with the original performance bond, get the work done quickly, and, you know, and especially if you know it's gonna be less because the scope of the work has changed, that's an incentive for Mr. Mercier to get it done on a quicker timetable.
I know, you're just tying up $15,000.
I don't-
So it's a
Well,
substantial
yeah,
amount of
and
money.
in lieu of, as I mentioned at the last meeting, in lieu of paying that in a fine, I think that's a win-win situation for Mr. Mercier.
Do performance bonds expire? Do they ever expire?
Well, no, at some
No?
point in time,
Okay.
if the work isn't done, then the city can step in and use it
Okay.
for their own contractor to perform the work.
As a matter of course, we would recommend that a performance bond that does expire not be accepted by the commission, because that then takes away the incentive to complete the work, or the ability for the city to step in the case the work isn't completed.
Right.
So
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah, I mean, what do you mean, expire such that they're entitled to the money back? No,
Yeah.
you could set an outside date such that if it's not done by this date, then the city will
We'll take it.
take possession of the performance bond to have the work done, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. The state, Massachusetts general laws deals with the particulars of handling of performance bonds in that situation, so.
So just a process question then, because it seems like we're all trying to minimize the transaction costs associated with this project. Does the applicant need to come before us again once the performance bond's in place, or can we agree following tonight, they just execute getting that performance bond in place, do the work, find out let me take a step back, get the performance bond in place, learn the outcome of the DEP hearing, and then from there decide what's next? Or do we have to have two separate meetings
Well, we need a some certain, and we need a completed proposal, and then we have to vote to accept it. And then once we've done that, then the applicant needs to present a check to the city treasurer's office, and the performance bond is put in place.
So that being said, what we're really talking about is, back to the chair's question, is how many weeks do you think that it would take you to get that in place, so that we're not setting up a meeting that we're going to just end up continuing because you're not ready?
Right.
See, I want to get this, me personally, I want this in place before the DEP's action. I mean, regardless of the DEP's action, I think this board, the commission, is leaning towards getting a performance bond. Whether, now this one contemplates the entire site restoration, but regardless, even if there's a superseding, there's still going to be a partial site restoration that's going to take place, that the performance bond can be utilized for that purpose. So regardless, I think the board wants to see a performance bond.
Well, why don't I come back in
place.
2 weeks? I need 2 additional quotes. I think I can do that within 2 weeks, and we'll see where we're at, you know?
All right. Do I have a motion to continue to finalize the proposal for the performance bond for the 1st March?
I'll motion to continue to finalize the proposal.
All right. In that regard, do we want, Commissioner Varnum, do we want to just see a brief update or a minor update to contemplate the existing mature trees on the replanting plan? Is that something that you're looking for?
If someone's working out there and wants to update the plan, but I think there's going to be changes to this plan anyway, and I think at that time that those changes need to be made, we can take into account the trees that are standing.
Okay, so not at this time then. All right.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
So if you think you can get back to us in 2 weeks, we have a motion to continue for 2 weeks. So I have a second.
I'll second it.
By Commissioner Lovely. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone come in from the National Park? No? All right. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is request for certificate of compliance, Lowell Community Health Center, 161 Jackson Street, concerning DEP file number 2060662. The project location is 101 and 161 Jackson Street.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Jody Trumfio, Trunfio, principal with TEC Engineering. I'm accompanied this evening by Mr. Steve Joncas with Joncas & Associates, JONCAS. We're here this evening to request a certificate of compliance for this proposed project. For the record, we were before you guys back in July of 2010, filing a notice of intent. The outcome of that hearing was that the commission issued order of conditions and special conditions with respect to the work that was to be performed at the project. That work included bridge restoration work and brick facade restoration work. The proposed means and methods to do that work was all contained to protect the resource area, that being the Hamilton Canal. As part of our application or request for compliance, we have provided some photos of some of the containment methods that were used. Specifically for the bridge work, there was a staging setup, a debris management system that had tarped a perimeter to prevent any debris from entering the canal system. This work was coordinated with the owners of the canal, Boot Hydropower, during a canal draw. So that was the method that was used to protect the bridge for all the beam restoration work. In terms of how the brick facade work was prepared, a similar type of scaffolding system was hung off the side of the building with some shielding and tarping that was at the base of the building at the canal wall. So that any brick cleaning, brick repointing, or facade washing was also protected from the canal system. I'd also like to add, just quickly, that last Friday, we did host a site walk. The members of the commission were in attendance to review the work, the completed work that was done, and at that time, we also gave a brief description of the work that was performed and the measures that were taken to protect the resource area.
Well, you've already had your grand opening out there, and I might add that it's one of the new jewels of the city. Other than that, I'm all in favor of issuing a certificate, but it's stunning what they did out there. It's really a nice addition to the city. So, Commissioner Varnum?
I agree that the building looks great, and I'm sure it's going to have a good use, too.
Commissioner Lovely?
No comments other than echoing the comments of my colleagues.
Commissioner Biedron?
It looks great. Yeah, when I was younger, I'd get lost a lot down there and I'd be scared to go down that road, but not anymore. It looks really, really good. Good job.
Thank you.
All right. No further discussion. Do I have a motion on this?
I'll offer a motion to issue a certificate of compliance to the applicant.
By Commissioner Lovely, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Varnum. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Yeah, aye.
Aye.
I'm Canadian
Aye.
tonight. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I hope the national park isn't part of anticipation of sequestration or something. What do we want to do? Do we want to take these up, or do we want to find out why someone's not here? Who has the office been in communication with regarding these?
We've been speaking with, the project manager is Christina Briggs at the National Park. I'm also aware that, I know Chuck Parrott, who's also a project manager over there, does a lot of the construction, clerking, or a lot of the project management construction that they do, is also aware that it was this evening, so, I don't know, maybe something came up, I'm not sure, but my understanding is that they were expecting to be at the meeting.
They were, is there anyone here for either one of these items? The first one is the National Historic Park concerning DEP file number 2060693. Project location is 23.1 School Street. The second one is, it's likewise a Lowell National Historic Park project, DEP file number 2060694, and the location is 307.1 Jackson Street. Yes, sir.
I'm here to represent DCR. DCR owns the property that these projects are being proposed. We met with the NPS and we support them.
All right. Were you planning on making a presentation tonight?
No, I was just here to offer our support as the property owners and say that we support it.
And what's your name again, sir?
Steve Carlin.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to request a continuance on these, because I honestly think that we need a representative here from the National Park Service.
I'll motion to issue, or for a continuance. Can I do both at the same time?
Yes.
For both notice of intent applications?
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, and that's for both. Moving on to other business, And I know we have someone here on this, and this is a review of the shielding plan for Kearney Square. This is concerning DEP file number 2060696. And this is the bridge on East Merrimack Street over, is that the Eastern Canal? Yeah, that's the Eastern Canal there, so.
Good evening. My name is Randall Bartlett. I'm the regional manager for Massachusetts and Connecticut and for Boot Hydropower. So I'm here representing, obviously, for the shielding plan that we submitted, and see if the commission has any any concerns with the proposed shielding plan.
All right, why don't you tell us?
We've submitted, I do not have copies of the plans. I'm not sure if, we had submitted them with the commission. I'm not sure if you guys have copies available. Essentially, the plan consists of a float system underneath the bridge, composed of plastic barrels with plywood and a wood framing over top, basically creating a platform underneath the bridge, with a 2-foot wall on each end, and it extends 5 feet past the work zones. And then the platform would be covered with a geotextile fabric to prevent any material from entering the waterway. Sorry about that. Thanks.
And that will be to remain in place during the entire, both phases of the work that's being done on the bridge?
I believe it actually shifts with the phases. So there's 2 phases for the project. So during the second phase, they would shift the platforms, but there would be no work performed. There would be a platform under all the exposed work area.
Now, is this does this take into account we approved an order of conditions for the work, and then subsequent to that, there was a meeting with respect to the bridge being closed only to one-way traffic during, I think it was the second phase of the project, but then that has changed now, and it's going to be open for two-way traffic during both phases. So is this shielding is sufficient to
That is correct. Yes.
cover the canal for the two-way?
And I believe this is very similar to what was done over by the Lowell community
Health center?
the health center is very similar. It's a similar method that's used for any sort of construction that's done over the canal system.
All right. Is there a maintenance plan? Because I know these phases are a couple of months each. Is there a maintenance plan for keeping the platform clean of, loose debris and windborne debris and
Yes.
that potential?
I believe that is listed in here that as part of that, there will be regular maintenance to remove debris that collects on the.
Okay. And lastly, this thing can be shifted, it completely in place, it won't have to be disassembled for the two different phases?
That is my understanding.
Okay, it's, okay.
It is a floating system, so it can be anchored and then released and shifted over for the second phase.
All right. Any questions from the commission? Procedurally, we can just accept this as an addendum to the order of conditions. We had requested information about the method that was going to be used, so this was in contemplation of the original order of conditions, so I think this just can be accepted for filing. I don't think we need to take any formal vote, but I don't know if we have any further questions from the commission. Commissioner Barnum, Commissioner Lovely, Commissioner Bedrin? All right, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And if there's any changes, obviously, and I guess, since I have you here, because of the change in the traffic that's going to be contemplated now, were there any changes to the plan that was submitted to us?
I do not believe so. We can double check, but
There may just be some changes in some of the impact attenuators that we put in some of the Jersey barriers.
what was that part of the?
Okay, I don't think it's,
I'm sure you have the latest,
yeah, I don't, to be, and I'm just going by memory now because I don't have the plans in front of me, but I don't think, I think this, since the shielding, it is protecting the resource that we're concerned about, I don't think the traffic patterns, or if there's changes to the width of the footprint that you're working with as opposed to phase 1, phase 2, I don't think that really matters to us all that much.
No, and the overall design of the bridges remained the same.
Right.
Yes.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know how the new proposed DEP regulations affect any of this. I think it's just for minor changes to utilities and road work and stuff, so I don't
I
think this
actually
would
have a
contemplate
copy,
this.
now that you mentioned that, for the commissioner to look. I haven't read through them completely, so I don't know either, but I think it might impact how this is looked at
All
in the
right,
future.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so Aaron, just submit this for the file as part of the order of conditions. Do I have Aaron, I don't think everyone was here, but could you just briefly about the minutes, what you guys are proposing to do?
Sure, absolutely. So, we had a little quick discussion before the meeting. What we're looking to do in development services to kind of help provide or improve access to meeting information. Obviously, minutes aren't verbatim. They're a summary, and we're trying to kind of keep them to a very brief summary, just to keep us up to date with the minutes for meetings. What we're going to start doing is actually time-stamping the agenda items on the minutes. So the first agenda item would be 7. Second agenda, in this case, the second agenda item for this evening was at 7:09. So we'll actually place that in the minutes, so whoever would like to review the meeting can skip through the first 5-6 minutes of the meeting on ltc.org and go directly to the discussion they're interested in. I think that might be one of the biggest barriers to people using the video recording. And that way, if someone really wants to see what happened during the meeting and get a detailed, or get understanding the detailed discussion that occurred, this will be an easier way to access that. So the trade-off is the minutes will be shorter, very much a summary. However, they will be able to direct people to the spot on the recording, which I think ultimately is more valuable to more people in the long run. So this is the first evening, actually, that we'll start doing that. So.
Now, I have just one question, being the inquisitive lawyer on the panel. In this day and age of video recording and being able to actually timestamp where in the meeting a particular project is heard, and for the entire world basically to be able to get a verbatim virtual view of the meeting at any time, is there even a reason to keep a summary minute? And I guess more importantly, could we get an opinion from the law department as to whether or not that's just a brief summary with timestamping is sufficient? You know, is there a general law that dictates that a hard copy minute must be kept, and what is the minimum that must be in that to satisfy the law?
I can answer that question a little bit now. We actually looked into that a bit because we were hoping to not write minutes anymore. It was our goal, actually, to save time at the staff level and just provide what would it turn out to be a table of contents that someone could go, or just the agenda, and click on the agenda item, and it would take them right to the video. And it still is our ultimate goal, to get to that place where someone will go online, go to the agenda, and it'll be hot linked, or whatever the term is. It'll be linked to that moment in the video. That's what we're shooting for, and that would hopefully take the place of minutes. However, open meeting law requires that the minutes are taken and are approved by the board or commission, that whoever's holding the meeting. And at a minimum, there needs to be a description of the agenda item, so essentially what is posted in the notice. There needs to be a record of who was in attendance. There needs to be a record of what the vote, so who made the motion, who seconded it, what was it 4-0, 4-1, whatever. And then there also, if it's a public hearing, there needs to be a record of who spoke during the public hearing, name and address, or if they're speaking on behalf of the applicant. And then the latest update to the open meeting law does require that there is at least a summary of the discussion. Now, it doesn't state exactly what that means. It definitely doesn't mean a summary of each member's, or commission member's thoughts and ideas. It's just a summary of the overall discussion. So, for example, tonight on the Shirley Ave discussion, what we would probably just say is that the plan was accepted, and that it was continued to discuss a bond at the next meeting. So, that is presumably enough from what we've heard back from the legal department. However, we still do have to provide that at the request of anybody, really.
Because after all, not everyone has an internet connection.
That's right, exactly right. But in the meantime, we'll work towards kind of both. This way, I think what we're trying to do is make the information, make the video recordings accessible as possible, so that people can use that more easily, and that way we can simplify the minutes, make sure they're up to date, keep them up to date, for those who actually absolutely need to have the minutes and have some sense of what the vote was. People can still have access to the minutes, or the recording at the library. They're there, and I believe in DVD, and also can use the computers there. So, for the most part, if you can get to the library, at the very least, you can get a verbatim discussion.
Aaron, I was going to say, since one of the agendas tonight is approving the January 9th meeting minutes, it seems to me, reading through them, they kind of follow that protocol. I don't know how much more bare bones you can get than what we have in front of us, and I think it's sufficient. I, for one, like the fact that we at least have a 2 or 3 sentence summary discussion for each of the items, and my sense is that isn't a huge level of effort for someone to compile. So I guess moving forward, if we look at January 9th being sort of the template, I think we're in a better place with regard to how we record what transpired at each of the meetings. And does that bring us up to, with the January 9th meeting minutes, does that bring us up to date? Or do we still have some laggards from last year?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there are several meetings that we do need to get caught up on.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that being said, do I have a motion on the minutes? This is for the January 9th, 2013.
I'll offer a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Do I have a second?
Second?
By Commissioner Biedron. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Is there any other business?
The only thing I did want to point out, and I'll hand out right now, is I did receive, or we received through the MACC listserv, a public notice on some proposed amendments to the Wetlands Protection Act that you just referenced. And so what I'll hand out is a summary of what is being proposed. And there are a series of public hearings that I believe it's DEP is holding, and one of them is going to be in the Northeast Regional Office in Wilmington. That's going to be in March 28th, and that's 10 to noon, in case you want to provide any feedback. But I did want to provide this for your review, and if there are any comments that you have for us, what we can see about, I'm sure we can forward them via email or a letter, formal letter to our local circuit rider. So that's what I'll be handing out now.
Aaron, will anyone from the city be attending?
That's a good question. I hadn't been planned on it, but we might be. Like I said, I haven't had a chance to review them yet. If there's something in here that we find problematic, absolutely.
Okay.
Another thing To Aaron, I'm not sure if it's on the agenda, but for this Saturday's Mass Association of Conservation Commissioners meeting, I'm willing to bet any changes, there might be a session for that, and I believe one, if not maybe a couple people from the city are gonna be attending that.
Yeah, I think Joe Genowitz is going
Joe's
to be attending that one, yes, correct, yeah,
I'm planning to go with myself, I'll take a look.
yeah. No, that would be a good item to discuss, because there actually are a number of proposed amendments in this. It was larger than I expected.
Oddly, the roadway one offended me least. It's some of the other ones that have lesser impacts in our city that I had more problems with, so. All right, without anything else, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll offer a motion to adjourn.
By Commissioner Lovely, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Varnum. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it, and good night.